We're live. Welcome back to Central Valley Talk. Elections are coming up. And by the way, I'm in Clovis today. If you guys can see, I'm in Clovis talking to some Clovis candidates. Elections coming up. You won't believe who's on the ballot. The governor's on the ballot. Every state constitutional officer's on the ballot from top to bottom. I know what you're thinking. Didn't we just vote not Gray Davis, Gavin Newsom in or out a couple months ago? Well, he's running again. He's on the ballot. So a lot of people are going to say, there's no reason to vote because there's nothing too exciting on the ballot. But this is actually the most important election because we have on this ballot school board candidates. And I think there's no more important election than school board. So we've been inviting some of the candidates in, especially from my hometown where my home school is. And our next guest is Chuck Manouel, and you're running for school board.
I am.
Now, you have kids in the Clovis schools?
I sure do. I have a sophomore at Clovis North, and I have a fifth grader still at Fugman Elementary. So we have two in Clovis Unified.
I knew Jim Fugman. They named the school after him.
That's right.
He was tough on us in high school, I tell you. He was our football coach for a while, and then he became our learning director. Anyway, Fugman School, you have a kid there, and at Clovis North. Clovis North is nice. When my kids were at Clovis, we're always at Clovis North because my kids were in music, and they had the most beautiful recital hall there.
Yeah, they sure do. And my daughter's in the drama program.
She's in that, so she's getting to experience that
absolutely
fine facility. Now, it's kind of a crazy election because you're not running against any incumbents.
Yeah, it's an interesting, thing that we're in is that we're no incumbent. There's nobody to support. So I think that's why there's so many candidates running.
A lot of people in there, huh?
Yeah, you get 4 candidates because there's no incumbent. And I mentioned to you earlier off the air that the district's really, the boundary's strange for the area that I'd be representing, and we happen to live in it. So
you just happen to live in the right little
area.
Happen to
live in the right little sliver.
Now, that's Clovis schools, tell me if I'm right, you have to live in a district, but the entire district votes for you.
That's correct. So I'm running for the Area 1 seat, which is many schools, Fugman included, and then everybody that lives within the Clovis Unified boundary can vote.
Right. Now, do you know how many people live in the Clovis Unified boundary?
Wow, it's a big number.
It's as big as a city. It's bigger than the city of Clovis, the number.
Correct.
I know that.
I'm thinking that the voter number is probably north of 150,000 voters.
Yes, that's right. That's about the number I heard recently. Now, the people mistake Clovis Unified for the city of Clovis.
Right.
And
happens a lot.
Really, half of the people who live in Clovis Unified or live in the city of Fresno, or should say not in Clovis. Some in the county, some in Sunnyside, all over the place.
Yeah, that's pretty close. Anything really north of Herndon, and I guess that's east of Willow.
Yeah, that's all not Clovis.
No, that's all Clovis Unified, north of Herndon. And
yeah, but
east,
what I'm saying, but that's not the city of Clovis.
Right.
So don't confuse the two. This is
right,
nothing to do with the
not.
city of Clovis.
Right.
It's mostly city of Fresno, I think, but a great tradition for a school district. When I went there, there was only one high school, Clovis High. Our principal was Pete Mijas.
Yeah.
And, it grew from there. Now, I only going to guess at your reason for running. 2 reasons. You have 2 kids in the school district.
I have 2. I look at this similar to what my wife does. She's been a room mom for a number of years. We don't do it just for our kids.
Right.
We do it for everyone's kids because there's a lot of people that don't have the time or the ability to run for office. There's a lot of moms that don't have time or the ability to be a room mom. So it's for all the kids, not just mine.
Now, for the tougher questions, are you running to keep going how it's going because it's going so great, or are you running because things are kind of going sideways in Clovis Unified?
I don't think things are going sideways in Clovis Unified, but I think the last 2 years were really difficult, and many people, it seems, have moved on from that and don't want to talk about it and talk about some of the issues that came up during that time and how to communicate better with parents and so forth. And then we have a lot of things on the horizon that I'm concerned could come into Clovis Unified, where I see it happening in other school districts across California and other states as well.
Okay. Now, the last 2 years, you said it's been kind of rough. Is that because of COVID?
Sure. And, the lockdown had a lot to do with it. The mask policy and the enforcement of that had a lot to do with it. But I think the other part is the parents, at least the ones that I know, and I know a lot of them, felt like they were left out in the dark. The communication wasn't very good from the administration, and there was a lot of back and forth with no real resolution. I think we can do a lot better job communicating with the parents. I mean, one of the things I talk about on my webpage and other places is I believe the parents are the customers, and we need to treat them like a customer.
They're the customers. That's a good way to look at it. Yep.
Right, and even if they've got a monopoly, we
Yeah.
still have to treat them as a customer.
Yeah.
And I think that we've lost sight of that. And I believe that the further you get away from the school sites, I think the school sites are doing a really good job, but the administration we need to get that on track.
Yeah. Every few years, school administrations start getting more and more top heavy. The administration gets bigger and bigger. Then sooner or later, somebody says, "Hey, look at that," and then they go back to less administration. It's kind of a tide that comes and goes. Now, your kids, how'd they do during the COVID? I mean, I don't even know what happened because I didn't have kids in school then, but they're
Sure.
just at home and the parents have to.
Well, the first part of the 2021 school year, the year that ended 2021, they finished on Zoom. They started on Zoom, and then some kids went back to class, but a lot chose not to. And then in last year's school year, we started back in person, and they were masked up all the time.
That's tough. For
Yeah,
kids.
and especially for the younger kids. I'm thankful my kids came out of it pretty well, but I know a lot of other families that their kids are still struggling.
Yeah, it is a tough time for our
Yeah.
kids.
And one other thing is, it's not just the kids it's hard on; it's hard on the teachers.
Yeah.
They weren't equipped at the time to teach on Zoom. So many of them did such a great job and worked so hard to make that happen.
One of the toughest jobs in a classroom is discipline. I just can't even imagine how they did it on Zoom. So.
It was interesting. Let's just say that.
Now, the one controversial issue came up, and it's coming up across the country. What do you think of these cell phones on campus?
That's a good question. I believe in it depends on the problem that we're having. I had a doctor once. I had a headache, and he prescribed me a medication, and he said, "I think that your headache is a fly. I want to use a fly swatter. I don't want to use a nuclear bomb." And I said, "Oh, that's a great analogy." I think it the same way at schools. I look at my daughter's a sophomore. She goes to class. Some of her classes have a little pouch. You just put it in when you walk in, and you grab it when you walk out. I think you start there, and if the problems persist, you can take incremental steps to make it not a distraction. I mean, I believe teachers should be teaching. They shouldn't have to worry about distractions, whether it be in pulling a mask up over your nose or some kid on a cell phone.
Yeah, I guess it's like any disciplinary issue. A kid that can handle it doesn't get disciplined, and those who keep abusing, they're going to lose
Right.
their cell phone.
Yeah, and so I think an incremental approach, if it becomes an issue in the classroom, is the way to go.
Yeah, I liked when they first came out, cell phones. That's when my kids were in school. Yeah, I wanted them. I wanted the safety of that phone in their hand. But my son just couldn't handle the responsibility. He could. In those days, the phones were buttons. He'd reach in his backpack and send texts all day long. So he lost it. He couldn't keep it up. So
Sure.
So how long till the election? It's less than a month.
Yeah, we're less than 3 weeks, actually. I think it's November 8th, the election. People have already received their ballots in the mail, including their sample ballot.
Right.
And there's a lot of information in the sample ballot. Each candidate has a statement. Love you to go on there and read mine.
Yeah. So it's already election day. I mean, people have their ballots.
They can mail them in anytime they want after they receive them. Sure.
Are you doing anything to reach out? Now, this is an impossible thing to campaign for because you're running for one little area, Clovis Unified, and it's an expansive area from Sunnyside all the way up to North Fresno. I think River Park area even. I'm not sure where it goes.
Right. It really is. It's a huge area.
Yeah.
And so the schools that I'd be representing, I mean, there's one that's right across from River Park. That would be Pinedale Elementary. It's right there. So we're doing a lot of digital outreach, and most of that's the website, which you can see on the screen, and then the Facebook and Instagram. And we're doing some advertising on that where you can actually do a geographic footprint, because I think that's the best way to reach voters nowadays is on those platforms.
And you don't just reach your little area; you have to reach the whole Clovis Unified because they're all your voters. So
and spend a lot of time physically, actually in Clovis, in the city limits, where we did a candidate forum there, and then I've been to a few other events out there as well.
I want to say to anybody watching, and I think half of our audience is in Clovis Unified, get your ballot out now, dust it off, don't wait till the last day. You know what's going to happen? It's going to snow or something on the last couple days. So check out Chuck Manouel. He's a wonderful guy. I've known his family for 30 years, his dad and his uncle, and I think he'd do a good job on that school board. But the only way he's going to get there is if you guys get your ballots out and vote for him. Don't just let it go because there's not a lot of other urgent things on there. Do you have some races that are overlapping with that in Congress or Assembly that are hot?
I really don't. I haven't really paid that much attention, especially to the statewide elections. I think the people that align with my particular viewpoint are in the minority. So
Yeah.
it's a bit challenging to get things done. I think one of the reasons I'm running for school board is I think even being one of 7, I can help make a difference locally, which I think is where things start. And the other part is I want to do everything in my power, which again, one of 7, to minimize the intrusion of the state on what we're trying to do locally. Clovis is one of the best school districts in the state,
Yes.
if not the best.
Yeah, I've
And
always said the best government's closest to the people. School
That's right.
board, that's where it should all happen.
100%.
Can you just touch, last thing, you're telling me the story, sad story about the school dances and the traditions that just aren't there anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm a little bit older, and we were talking off camera about how I encouraged my daughter when she got to her freshman year to go to football games, and what astonished me, having not been to really many high school football games, is how few students there were there. And there's 2,500 kids at Clovis North, and there's very few students. And I thought, wow, that's weird. And then, isn't there anything to do after the game? There's no dances. That's weird too. And so maybe it's just because I'm a little older, and maybe the kids are a little bit less interested. They've got this thing in their pocket all day, and they can be on there and communicating with each other
Yeah.
in different ways. But I would love to see some of that come back,
Yeah.
and those kids get those experiences.
Good old traditions, yeah.
Right. It's not just about the academics; it's about the experience. Those are the lifelong friendships that they're going to have.
I know my mom took me to that first dance, and oh man, I'm not going to a dance.
Yeah.
She shoved me out of the car,
Yeah.
and then I went every time.
Right.
You know, and I'm really glad she did that, but there's no way I would have gone.
My daughter had the same experience when I made her go to that first football game, and now she goes to all the games, and she's with all of her friends, and they're, this week, I think at Close North is the pink out game, so they're all going to be wearing their pink T-shirts, and they're going to have a
Nice.
great time.
By the way, are they four-year high schools there?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're all Clovis schools are
Yeah,
4 years.
sure.
Good.
Yeah.
Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. That's the best way to go to school.
That's right.
All right, Chuck Manouel, let's double check because I mistyped. Is your webpage chuckderman.com?
It is, and same thing on Instagram and Facebook, Chuck Derman, CUSD on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay.
You can find a lot of information there, a lot of the reasons I'm running. Again, let's kids first. The parents need to be treated as customers. We need to have a little bit better transparency, in my view, and communicate better with the parents, and probably, last but not least, minimize the state intrusion. I mean, there's a lot
Yeah.
of things that are happening. I think the governor
Yeah.
even announced yesterday that he's not going to lift the state of emergency until February. It's almost 3 years in.
Yeah, we need the state out of Clovis Unified's business.
That's
Anyway,
right.
last thing I want to say is that thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
We've invited all the candidates, but you're just very transparent, and you march right down here to Little
That's right.
Central Valley Talk and let us ask you any question we wanted, and you're the only one in your race that has done that. I really appreciate you taking
Well,
the
I
time
appreciate
to do
you
that.
inviting me. I enjoyed it.
We'll be back with more Central Valley Talk. Chuck Manouel running for Clovis Unified School Board. We'll be back with more right after this.
Thanks.